Recent breaking news to tell you about from our friends over at ABC News. ABC is reporting this, that one of former President Trump's longtime assistants told federal investigators that Trump repeatedly wrote to-do lists for her on documents from the White House that were marked classified. That's according to sources familiar with her statements. I'll continue to read from this report. Quote, as described to ABC News, the aide Molly Michael told investigators that more than once she received requests or taskings from Trump that were written on the back of note cards. And she later recognized those note cards as sensitive White House materials with visible classification markings used to brief Trump while he was still in office about phone calls with foreign leaders or other international related matters. Continuing from ABC's reporting, quote, the note cards with classification markings were at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate when FBI agents searched the property on August 8th, 2022. But the materials were not taken by the FBI, according to sources familiar with what Molly Michael told investigators. Quote, when Michael, who was not present for the search, returned to Mar-a-Lago the next day to clean up her office space, she found the documents underneath a drawer organizer and helped transfer them to the FBI that same day. That's sources telling ABC News. The sources said Michael also told federal investigators that last year she was extremely concerned with how Trump handled recurring requests from the National Archives for the return of all government documents being kept in boxes at Mar-a-Lago. And she felt that Trump's claims about it at the time would be easy to disprove, according to sources. It is a remarkable, let me just read you Trump's response here, to be fair to them. Quote, a Trump spokesperson said that what ABC News was told through what the spokesperson called, quote, illegal leaks lacks, quote, proper context and relevant information. I see. Andrew Weissmann, this is the case that you and Mary McCord and on the intelligence side, Sue Gordon and John Brennan think represents a grave threat to U.S. national security and thinks is one so clear in the facts and the content and the criminality that it's pretty open and shut. This seems like another reason why that is the case every time we talk about it.
Absolutely. We didn't need this piece of proof, but this is an aide to Donald Trump who is saying that she knows firsthand that Donald Trump knew that he had classified information that he should not have had at Mar-a-Lago, that she told him that his claims to the government that he had returned everything would be, quote, easily disproven, unquote. And when Donald Trump learned that she was going to be spoken with by the investigators, she said that Donald Trump told her, you don't know anything about the boxes. So you have not only a firsthand witness to the illegal retention of the national defense information, but you have yet another instance of alleged obstruction of justice, which is lying to investigators. I would point out this would make the third instance of obstruction, because two are already charged in the indictment. And this is somebody who, again, could be just yet another, I will say it's not even piece of a puzzle, because the puzzle has been complete for so long. This is just an overwhelming rock crusher of the case, if this reporting is accurate, from Ms. Michael, who many people say is employee 2 in the Florida indictment. But it certainly has the ring of truth. But obviously, we will wait and see what she has to say at trial, and she'll be subject to cross-examination like every witness in the case.
I mean, Mike, it's an interesting piece of reporting that ABC includes these observations that Andrew's making. Let me continue to read from their reporting. Quote, as ABC News has previously reported, Michael is believed to be the person identified in Special Counsel Jack Smith's indictment as Trump employee 2. Described in the indictment as someone who handled many of Trump's White House-era boxes at Mar-a-Lago and who provided Trump with photos of those boxes that were included in the indictment. And then there's this line that Andrew's highlighting. This is also from ABC News. Quote, sources said that after Trump heard the FBI wanted to interview Molly Michael last year, Trump allegedly told her, quote, you don't know anything about the boxes. There's only one way to take that, knowing that she's the one who handled the boxes for him, according to ABC's reporting, and sent him the photos that ended up in the indictment. What do you make both of this new piece, as Andrew, I like it that the puzzle's complete, but it's sort of like a spare piece, as well as what we're learning about how Trump treated her?
I mean, look, that sounds, very obstruction-y. You don't need to be a former federal prosecutor to know that when you have someone in such a position of power, like a former president saying to an aide, you don't know anything about the boxes, that type of thing is easy to get your head around. You don't have to understand the Presidential Records Act. You don't have to understand the sensitivities of classified information. You just have to understand how investigations work and how there's an assumption in this country that when investigators ask you questions, you're going to provide them with truthful testimony. And you don't need a law degree to figure that out and understand that. And I think that speaks to part of the strengths of the documents case, where the documents case is something that is a lot about obstruction, and it's pretty easy for people to get. The whole process of how documents are classified and unclassified and used at trials, that's confusing. But to understand the way that someone didn't give back something that they were supposed to, and on top of that, there were false statements made about that, those are easy concepts to get your head around. And it's not braided together with presidential powers. It's just sort of someone trying to throw sand in the gears of an investigation.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I want to ask you a two-part question. I want to continue to read from this because, to Mike's point, if you have a principal that's complying with a subpoena from the FBI and you find something underneath your desk organizer that wasn't turned over, you have a system, right? You get it to the lawyer and you get it to the FBI. The fact that women like Cassidy Hutchinson had to, after having a lawyer that made her lie to the 1-6 committee, then go out and find a new lawyer, and then she would proceed to give truthful testimony. To have someone, and I believe Molly Michael worked for Trump until this investigation heated up, until rather recently. She certainly went with him in the post-presidency. I mean, to have these individuals who have to take these extraordinary risks to their reputation, their career, their career opportunities, it really says more about Trump and the commitment to obstruct the FBI's efforts to regain control of classified material.
Absolutely. You have these people who you can say they should have known better, but you do see with Ms. Michael, when push came to shove and she knew that there were these representations being made by Donald Trump, which she says in this reporting she knew was false. I think one of the more remarkable things, in addition to what Mike says about the simplicity of this, is her saying there would be nobody who would know better what was in these boxes than Donald Trump because he was so possessive of them. That is such a devastating statement. And then to your point about sort of not turning stuff over, it is worth noting that this kind of witness goes a really long way in the court of public opinion when you're thinking about what Mike Pence did when he found classified material that shouldn't have been in his possession. When Joe Biden found material, although that investigation is not over, and so it remains to wait exactly what those findings are. But there's no evidence that they took these kinds of actions. And what you would normally do if you were innocently holding these and you had inadvertently taken them is you would have had a completely different conversation. You would have said, oh my God, we need to call them immediately and get these back, and call them and find out what's the best way to get them back. Because if you're the president of the United States, you know how important these are to the country's national security. And instead, it's exactly the opposite. The reporting is, I'd like to engage in a crime and I'd like to keep these and I'd like you to lie for me, which is exactly the kind of thing that's already alleged in the indictment. He said to his lawyers that he wanted them to lie for him, and they refused. So this is definitely yet another very strong piece of evidence, if the reporting is accurate, in a case that was already very strong. And I should say, just for people who are concerned about the case being in Florida, I mean, you have to give some credit to people, in the jury that will have common sense. I mean, this is just such an overwhelming case. It is really impossible to think that the president, when he is tried, will be acquitted of these charges.